Hello, this is the first flipped lecture on aspects of articulatory description, and this one is on parametric diagrams. We'll be doing a number of lectures on parametric diagrams. This one is on voicing, soft palate movement and voice quality. Parametric diagrams are useful because they can help you visualize what's going on in a diagrammatic form when you're thinking about speech, and also because it can help you write the articulatory description as well. A good parametric diagram is really helpful when you're writing articulatory descriptions. So what we're going to be looking at here, diagrams in an articulatory description, what sort of diagrams you need to have, the parametric diagram, voicing and soft palate movement, and we're also going to be considering voice quality. There are three diagrams that we include in the articulatory description, in the written narrative, looking at how we can describe a phrase that's being spoken by somebody using a particular accent. Now, in this course, it's going to be me, and I'm fairly standard Southern British, General British, whatever it is we're going to call it. So you'll be looking at my particular accent, but it's useful for looking at other accents as well, understanding how this works, understanding how to describe them. So the diagrams that we have in an articulatory description are the parametric diagram, the sagittal section, that's the half cut of the face where you can see a side view of what's going on in the oral cavity mainly, and also a vowel chart, and we've looked a bit at vowel charts in Sounds, Grammar and Meaning and also in English phonology. In this lecture we're looking specifically at parametric diagrams, and we're going to have a couple of lectures where we look at those. So to start with, voicing. English voiced plosives are partially or fully devoiced. You may remember this if you've taken English phonology or if you've taken another course which is looking at English plosives and so on. This is also the case with most English voiced obstruents. They don't tend to have much voicing in them. Obstruents include plosives, affricates and fricatives, those categories of sound. They can be fully voiced, but this tends to be when they're surrounded by voiced sounds. So English voiced plosives are partially or fully devoiced, word initially following a pause or a voiceless consonant, word finally preceding a pause or voiceless consonant, and this means that both consonants in the word dog, if I say it on its own, dog, dog, are partially devoiced. They really don't have a lot of voicing in them. If I produced that word with more voiced plosive consonants, it would sound like this: dog, dog, which still sounds like the same word, sounds a little bit unusual. Now, of course, when I'm talking about English here, I'm talking about this reference accent, which is similar enough to my accent. If we're looking at other varieties of English, it's quite possible that voicing patterns are going to be different. So we're looking at this reference accent, and this will help you to consider what's going on in other accents of English. The diacritic for devoicing is a small circle underneath the relevant symbol or above it if the symbol has a descender. So usually we put the small circle underneath like this, but occasionally if a symbol has a descender, and that means if it goes under the line, so if we're going to write this consonant, for example, oh, that's not what I had in mind. If we're going to write this consonant, then it will sit on the line like that. This is not a very straight line, sorry. Then we put the descender over the top. Now I should just say that occasionally on this font on my computer the diacritics do odd things. Mainly they're okay, but we can see here that we've got the small circle above this symbol, and that's because the descender here goes under the line. Voiced consonants are also devoiced when preceded by a voiceless consonant in a consonant cluster. We're talking about other voiced consonants now, sonorant sounds, not obstruents. So for example, the R sound in pray, pray, pray is D-voiced. It's also can be very, very fricative sounding, pray, pray, but we'll just consider the voicing here. And the L in play, 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 also doesn't have very much voicing in it. English voiceless consonants are strongly aspirated in word initial position preceding a vowel. Why have I put scare quotes around this? Well, as we saw, voiced consonants do not have much voicing in them, so we're using these two terms, voiced and voiceless, as kind of shorthand, really. But because there's not much difference in voicing between these types of consonants in certain positions in words, other things have to happen. We get other auditory cues and acoustic cues going on to let us know which sound it is we're producing. So English voiceless consonants are strongly aspirated in word initial position preceding a vowel, and again we're talking about this reference accent. Voice onset time, which is the time between the release of the consonant and the start of the vowel in a following vowel, is therefore delayed. For example, in the word top, top, there's a burst of aspiration, top, top. After I say the t sound, you can feel a strong burst of air in this accent, and the diacritic for showing that is a raised H. I'll show you what that looks like in transcription in a moment. Voiceless consonants are never aspirated in clusters with a pre-initial S sound. So if the S is in a cluster where it's preceding one of these consonants, then we don't aspirate that consonant. So we saw in the previous slide that we aspirate them if they are in word initial position, but if they're preceded by an S sound, we don't aspirate them in this accent. There is a diacritic for never aspirated, and it's a small equals mark. It looks like this. It's not on the main IPA chart. Generally speaking, if something's aspirated, we just don't bother putting a symbol there, and you don't have to put a symbol there, but if you want to absolutely make the point that this cannot be aspirated, then you can use this diacritic. This is one that I've seen particularly used in speech and language therapy, where it might be more helpful to indicate that something is not being aspirated, but we will include it in these transcriptions where relevant. In word final position, when followed by a pause or a voiceless consonant, these sounds are glottalized or glottally reinforced, and this means they are preceded by a glottal stop. And the effect of this is to cut off the vowel sound or the preceding sonorant sounds, so make them much shorter before you reach these three consonants here. So the effect is to shorten the duration of the preceding sonorant sounds, and this includes vowels and non-obstruent consonants. To show a vowel is shortened, we can do a number of things. If we're using a system with length marks, a phonemic system with length marks, then basically we can just remove bits of the length marks. So we can remove length marks in the case of English long vowels to indicate that it's produced shorter, or we can add this diacritic, which looks like a kind of half moon, this one here, over the top, in the case of English short vowels, if we want to do that. So there's a number of different ways of showing the duration of different vowel sounds as they are affected by the clipping of the vowel, the shortening of the vowel because of the glottal reinforcement or glottalization. Okay, here's an example with the word top, which we saw before. In this I have given a fairly basic narrow phonetic transcription. So we can see here that we've got our initial voiceless alveolar plosive. Then we've got the burst of aspiration, because this is an initial plosive consonant not preceded by an S sound. Then we've got, if we move on to the consonants here, we've got a final voiceless plosive consonant, and this is shown as having a glottal stop before it because it has this glottal reinforcement, this glottalization that we've got going on there. Because of this, the short vowel, English short vowel here, which is the lot vowel, this is shown as having this diacritic over the top of it, this one. And that indicates that it is produced very short indeed. It's much shorter than if it was a word like tog, for example. That's the warmth value of duvets. So it's actually much shorter there. So that's what we've got going on there. Okay, now this is the basic structure for a parametric diagram. So what we do is we give each sound a space like this, and then I'm going to show you the voicing information going on as we're producing this word using this reference accent. Why have I put the aspiration in with the vowel and not with the consonant? Well, it's because this affects the onset of the vowel, and that's something that we want to show. We want to show that the voicing is affected by the positioning of this, by the fact that we get this aspiration following this consonant here. Okay, so let's animate this. In this diagram, if sounds are voiced, they're marked with a row of V's, and if they are voiceless, they're marked with a line like that. So to start with, we've got our voicelessness. So there's no voicing, assuming this word is produced on its own in isolation, there's no voicing when I start saying this consonant, and there's no voicing during it. It's a voiceless consonant, there is no voicing. But also we have this amount of aspiration, and this impinges on the onset of the vowel. So rather than the vowel starting immediately, I'm in the release phase of my consonant. So this is the point at which my tongue is moving away from the alveolar ridge and the upper molars. Rather than the voicing starting straight away, we've got this period of voicelessness because of the aspiration. Then we have the voiced portion of the vowel sound here, so we can show that there is some voicing here, but it is delayed onset because of the aspiration. For the remaining consonants, this is a voiceless glottal plosive, and this is a voiceless bilabial plosive, so there is no more voicing. So that's what this diagram looks like, showing the voicing pattern for this particular word. If we look at the example for stop, what's the same here is we've got this same shortened vowel sound because of the glottalization, the clipping brought about by having the glottal reinforcement of the final consonant. We've also got our voiceless alveolar plosive, but this time it is not aspirated, and we can mark that here to show it's not aspirated, and this means that there's no need to put anything in here because this isn't aspirated, so the vowel is going to start pretty soon after the release of this consonant. This consonant is not aspirated because it is preceded by a voiceless alveolar fricative, and if we have an S cluster at the beginnings of words in this accent, then there is no aspiration of the following word. So again, just showing the voicing patterns, we start with the voicelessness here. These are both voiceless consonants, but instead of having this voice onset time, this short gap here before the voicing starts, the voicing starts immediately for the vowel sound, and then again we have, once the glottis is closed, we no longer have any voicing, and then this is a voiceless consonant. So that's what this diagram looks like here. Okay, in this example we've got all sonorant sounds, so we've got a voiced post-alveolar approximant, and we've got a diphthong. So what happens in this case, from a voicing point of view, we're starting here, before we start saying the word, there's no voicing if it's said in isolation, ray. And then all the way through here we've got voicing, basically. That's what happens there, and then by the time I get to the end of the vowel, we can say that there's voicelessness following that. My vocal folds have stopped vibrating. Well, what happens if I have a voiceless plosive consonant in front of this, this sound, which as we know is a sonorant? Well, as mentioned before, we lose the voicing, or at least we lose some of the voicing. We may lose all of it, we may lose a portion of it, but we certainly find that this sound lacks voicing. Now you could, if you were thinking about it from this point of view, say, well, if this was the word pay, for example, without the r sound, we'd get aspiration following this consonant, so that would have an effect on the following sound. If it was a vowel, it would start later because of the aspiration. So in some ways we can consider that what's going on here is the same process. We've got delayed voicing because this is a voiceless plosive consonant, which we'd expect normally to be aspirated. But instead of having a vowel here, we've got an intervening approximant consonant. So what happens is this is the bit that loses the voicing. So we're starting here with our voicelessness there, and we have at least a period of voicelessness before the voicing starts, and then the vowel is voiced all the way through, and then this is the point at which my vocal folds have stopped vibrating. So that's basically what's going on in this diagram. It's quite likely that this is going to have an amount of friction. As I said before, we can write that, we can show that in a different way, but we're not going to worry about that too much at the moment. Pray, 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 pray. Quite a lot of friction going on there. I haven't indicated that here. I'm interested in the voicelessness. And it's possible that the voicing might start even later than this. Okay, so for practice, I'd like you to give allophonic transcriptions of these 4 words. Look at all the information that I've given you earlier on in this slide and the example diagrams, and provide a parametric diagram of voicing for each of these 4 words. So the words are kitchen, tart, start, and body. I'll let you get on with that. Now, something else we have to put in these diagrams is soft palate movement. We have to say what's going on with the velum. Is the velum raised or lowered? And as we know, the velum must be lowered if we're producing nasal consonants, and it must be raised if we're producing obstruent consonants, because we want the pressure build up, or we want the friction basically, and we're not going to get that with a lowered velum. So the velum is lowered in the articulation of nasal sounds, and some neighbouring sounds are also affected, and these are vowels and approximants, so other sonorant sounds. Here's an example showing all non-sonorant consonants, and then we have a vowel in the middle there. And we're just looking at the action of the velum. So if the velum is raised, there'll be a line in this sort of position here, and if it's lowered, there'll be a line in this sort of position. So raised velum, we're looking for a line up here. Lowered velum, we're looking for a line down there. So what happens when I'm producing this word in isolation? Pat, remember we're just looking at the movement of the velum here. The velum will rise in order for me to produce the plosive consonant, because it has to be high. It will remain closed for the whole period of this word, because I've got another plosive consonant here, so I need it to be raised for that, so there's no reason to lower it in the meantime. And then the velum will lower, assuming I'm returning to breathing, or I might have a nasal consonant following this, but the velum will lower at that point. But what about the word pan? Again, we're looking at a raised velum, which is going to be around this area here, and a lowered velum, which is going to be around this area here. So as we saw before, the velum has to rise for me to produce the obstruent consonant. It has to be lowered, however, for me to produce the nasal consonant. So it's going to be down here somewhere, and we have to get from there to here. So what happens, and you can see that I've put a small diacritic over the top of this vowel sound here, what happens is that the velum lowers during the production of the vowel. So we get the velum lowering there, and then it has to be lowered by the time I produce the nasal consonant. Pan, pan. So we get some nasal quality going on here in the production of this vowel. It doesn't start with nasalization, but slowly the velum opens, and we end up with a vowel with nasalized voice quality. Now looking at this the other way around, this time we've got mat, so again we're looking at a raised or a lowered velum, and for the m sound it's a nasal, so my velum has to be lowered. My velum is going to have to be raised for this t sound here, and so what happens is the velum raises during the production of the vowel sound, and then by the time it gets to the production of the plosive consonant, the obstruent, it is raised. And then it will lower back again for normal breathing. And finally, oh, this is interesting, I've got the wrong consonant there, excuse me. make sure the right one is on Blackboard. So what we've got now here, remember the raised velum is going to be here and the lowered one there. We have all nasal consonants. So starting in the rest position with the velum lowered, we're basically just going to have a lowered velum for the whole of that, because there's no point raising the velum here, and it doesn't matter in English if this vowel is nasalized or not. It doesn't have any phonemic meaning at all doing that. So I'm starting with a lowered velum, and I have a lowered velum throughout. The lowered velum, this is the rest position. So if I'm just sitting there breathing, usually with my mouth closed, then the air is going through the nose, and oops, sorry about that. And so this means that the rest position is to have the velum open, lowered, and when we start thinking about how to write an articulatory description, you'll see it's important to start by describing the rest position. Okay, give an allophonic transcription of the following words and provide parametric diagrams of soft palate movement for them. So add in as many diacritics as you can. The words are thing, nurse, moan and Pete. So add in as much information as you can at the moment, and if you want to, you can add in the voicing information too. Okay, now what we're looking at here is both lots of information. So we're looking at whether the velum is raised or lowered, and then we're also looking at what's going on, with the voicing. So voiceless should be a single line there. So the word we've got here is time. So to give an allophonic or a basic narrow phonetic transcription of this, I've got my plosive sound here, then I've got my aspiration, I've got my vowel sound here, and because of the following nasal consonant, it is nasalized. So if we're looking at the movement of the velum, we start from the rest position. The velum raises because I have an obstruent consonant there, and then during the production of the vowel it lowers, and it's lowered by the time we get to the production of the nasal consonant, and it remains lowered after I've finished articulating the word. For the voicing, as we've seen in the other diagrams, I've got this period of voicelessness at the beginning of the vowel here. The voicing is delayed for the vowel because of the preceding voiceless plosive consonant. So I've got this period of voicelessness here. The vocal folds start not in vibration. By the time they get here, they are also not in vibration, because we've got this period, the voice onset time period, the delay of onset of the vowel. And then for the rest of the articulation, we know that this is a voiced sound, so the whole of that is going to be voiced, and then for the rest position, my vocal folds again return to being open so that I can just breathe through them. Okay, 4 words in this instance to transcribe. Transcribe the words, add as many diacritics as you can, and then provide parametric diagrams of voicing and soft palate movement. The words are done, tape, never, and stone. Nasalization, which we've seen affects vowel sounds, can also affect other kinds of consonants, sonorant consonants. So I want you to think about what this would look like. You can add a nasal diacritic to any relevant sound. It doesn't have to be a vowel, you can add it to sonorant consonants as well. So here are a couple of words which may or may not contain other sonorant consonants. You can pretty much guarantee there are some in there if I've given this to you for practice. So the words are music and Henley. Transcribe those. You can do a phonemic transcription first if you want to, then add the allophonic transcription with diacritics, and then give a parametric diagram of voicing and soft palate movement for each of them. Something else that's worth thinking about here is voicing. So we describe voice quality, this is how the voice sounds, in many different sorts of ways. We're going to be looking at 3 here. Normal voice, which is referred to as modal voice. So the voice that I'm speaking to you in at the moment, actually my voice tends to be a little bit on the breathy side, but it's fairly modal. It's normal. I haven't got any kind of strong breathiness or any creakiness going on in it mainly. Voices can also be breathy. You may remember we practiced this in English phonology. So breathy voices sound much more like this. And they can also be creaky. A creaky voice sounds like that. So this is a creaky voice quality. Marilyn Monroe is a good example of somebody with a breathy voice, and young American females are said to use quite a lot of creaky voice, but I hear it quite a lot with young British females as well. The diacritic for breathy voice is 2 dots under each affected sound. So, for example, if I've got this sequence of sounds and it's breathy, it will sound like this: ah-ba, ah-ba, ah-ba. And we've got this breathiness going on there, so I can indicate that each one of those sounds has breathy quality. For creaky voice, the symbol is the same as for nasalization, except it's underneath. So we've got, for example, ah-ba, 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 and that's indicating that all of these consonants are produced with creaky voice. If I say it ah-ba, ah-ba, then I've got neither. Voice quality is not necessarily predictable. You can't predict it in the same way as you can predict whether something is going to be aspirated or something is going to be glottally reinforced or anything like that, whether the velum is likely to lower. You can't predict it that sort of way. So it's not like saying a vowel will be nasalized if it precedes or follows a nasal consonant, for example. So there isn't really a rule for creaky or breathy voice. You just have to listen and see what the speaker is doing, and we'll see later that you can actually identify features of this on spectrograms as well. Also, you get speakers who are a mixture of all of these things. If speakers are creaky, they often tend to start off with modal voice and it goes creaky later on in the utterance. This can be to do with being tired as well, so if I'm feeling tired I might have quite creaky voice. For example, if I'm feeling out of breath, my voice might be quite breathy. So there are lots of different reasons, physiological reasons as well as linguistic reasons for having these sorts of voice qualities. Okay, now I'm going to give you some words to practice with, and what you need to do is add diacritics for nasalization, breathy or creaky voice to the words on the next slide, and add any other diacritics you think necessary. If you want to draw parametric diagrams as well, that's entirely up to you, but I want you to think about what this sounds like basically and how you'd give a broad phonetic, an allophonic transcription of that. I'm just going to have a quick drink of water so that I'm not too my voice quality isn't too weird while I'm producing this. Incidentally, if you're ever doing any singing recording, it's good to have a bottle of water with you, otherwise you get lots of mouth noises. Okay, here we go. So for each of these words I want you to add diacritics. Are you ready? So the first one is allowed, allowed, allowed. You can add in intonation if you want as well, if you know how to do that. The next one is older, older, older. The next one is into, into, into. The next one is hello, hello, hello. The next one is manner, manner, manner. And finally we've got yesterday, yesterday, yesterday. Okay, see how you do with those.